Listen for words from Genesis and Proverbs. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, to be like us. Let them be stewards of the fish in the sea, the birds of the air, the cattle, the wild animals, and everything that crawls on the ground." Doesn't wisdom call? Doesn't understanding raise her voice? On the hills along the road, at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Beside the city gates of the town, in the gates themselves, she cries out, "Women and men, people everywhere, I'm calling out to you. I cry out to all of humankind." God gave birth to me at the beginning, before the first acts of creation. I have been from everlasting, in the beginning, before the world began. Before the deep seas, I was brought forth. Before there were fountains or springs of water, before the mountains erupted into place, before the hills, I was born. Before God created the earth or its fields or even the first clods of dirt. I was there when the Almighty created the heavens and set the horizon just above the ocean, set the clouds in the sky, and established the springs of the deep, gave the seas their boundaries and set their limits at the shoreline. When the foundation of the earth was laid out, I was the skilled artisan standing next to the Almighty. I was God's delight day after day, rejoicing at being in God's presence continually, rejoicing in the whole world and delighting in humankind. For the word that was in the beginning, for the word that invites and inspires, for the word embodied in us, we give thanks.
Listen for words from the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verses 12 to 15. I have much more to tell you, but you can't bear to hear it now. When the Spirit of truth comes, she will guide you into all truth. She won't speak on her own initiative. Rather, she'll speak only what she hears, and she'll announce to you things that are yet to come. In doing this, the Spirit will give glory to me, for she will take what is mine and reveal it to you. Everything that God has belongs to me. This is why I said that the Spirit will take what is mine and reveal it to you. For the promise of the gift of the Spirit of truth, we give thanks.
May the dance of infinite love and community shape our lives. I quote Rosie Braidotti from her book Nomadic Subjects, Embodiment and Sexual Difference in Contemporary Feminist Theory. She writes, "I feel a real urgency to elaborate alternative accounts, to learn to think differently about the subject, to invent new frameworks, new images, new modes of thought. Limiting Jesus, limiting divinity and community." Ernst Käsemann, who was a Reformed Church New Testament scholar, a brilliant scholar in his day, I don't think he ever became a feminist, but he was brilliant when he was. He shares a story in his lovely little book, which is easily read, Jesus Means Freedom. He shares an anecdotal story about a congregation in Amsterdam, as I promised I'd give you, in 1952, which the congregation faced a life-challenging incident. One Sunday there were severe storms and floods. So if they were to survive, the congregation needed to go out and strengthen the canal barriers. Did you ever have to do that? But they believed they should honour the Sabbath. It was a Sunday, of course, and Christian Sabbath, and never work on a Sunday. The church council told the pastor that they must obey God's will, even if it meant death. God, being all-powerful, would save them. Their duty was obedience. When the pastor suggested that Jesus himself broke the Sabbath on occasions, one venerable older man said that he had always suspected that the Lord Jesus was just a bit of a liberal. And the serious point here is Kaiserman concluded that the liberal Jesus was a cause of offence. Offence to Orthodox Jews, to his first disciples, and the whole church to this very day, due to his peculiar freedom. A limited view of Jesus limits our views of the divine. A limited view of Jesus limits how we live our lives in community. So we can imagine, and here's a bit of a segue, please journey with me as I meander. So, can we imagine what the response would be if the pastor shared Jürgen Moltmann's interpretation of the first person of the Trinity in relation to the second person? Now, I'm going to use these words, and they're not my words, they're not my terms, but I'm reflecting to you Moltmann's terms. He writes that when the Father generated his only begotten Son in eternity, the Son was not created as the world was, but proceeded from the substance of the Father, and hence is the same substance as the Father. Moltmann suggests that God as Father is a motherly Father too. A motherly Father. He is no longer defined in a unisexual patriarchal terms, but if we allow for the metaphor of language in terms of bisexuality or transsexuality. Now this is in 1980, dear friends. Moltmann noted that the Council of Toledo in 675 ACE stated a similar thing, and he was informed by that, I think. So, from the council I read, it must be held that the Son was created neither out of nothingness nor yet of any substance, but he was begotten or born out of the Father's womb. That is, out of the very essence. Now, I think the Amsterdam Church Council would not only dismiss this pastor if he shared this new thinking, but they would question whether he really understood the Christian faith. But while I see that Moltmann is attempting to elaborate alternative accounts to learn to think differently about divinity and the divine and Trinity, to use Rosie Briotti's words, why does he still use gender-exclusive language and just focus on biology? And I'll leave that question with you to consider. My second point, shall we look for another? Women held in patriarchal bonds. New Testament scholar, I think she's now passed and retired and passed, Elizabeth Wainwright, in her book, Shall We Look for Another? A Feminist Rereading of the Matthean Jesus, and she wrote this in 1998, she said that there was an urgency among many women to think differently, that recent feminist critical theology and praxis has brought to light a crisis. Images and models of thought that gave meaning to Jesus in the context of Christian community in the past, that is, she says, using Lord, Son of God, Son of Man, they are no longer functioning in the same way for women who are moving towards new female feminist subjectivities. Jesus, as refracted through the lens of centuries of androcentric and patriarchal theology and ideology, she says, is proving to be a stumbling block. Following Bradotti, Wainwright calls for a critique and an invention. We cannot just critique something. What do we replace it with? But for a critique and invention to move forward together. The goal is both a move out of patriarchy and its power dynamics toward a transformed transformation of society. She writes that we need foundational stories and symbols that yield life-giving meaning, which means representation of divinity beyond merely male symbolisation. And with feminist theologian Elizabeth Schussler-Fiorenza, Wainwright reminds us that patriarchy is a multi-dimensional system of oppressive structures. And patriarchy, the rule of fathers, and kuriarchy, the rule of males, elites. And today we can see the rule of males persisting throughout the world in our post-democratic society. And somehow we need to challenge and change that. And we need to be aware of the multi-dimensional nature of power of patriarchal oppression. That is, these forms of oppression move into race, class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, condition, and age. We're living in the times of neo-colonisation. And colonisation may not be just taking this place, but colonisation is taking our minds, infecting our minds and our practices, and the way we deal and use power. So we are living in times of neo-colonisation, and that neo-colonisation is informing the ecological crisis, the power of neoliberalism, neo-capitalism, and post-democracy. Added to this, Wainwright calls each of us, regardless of our identity or subject position, to recognise, to wake up to identify the truth of our particular embeddedness and power and powerlessness in our contexts of our neo-colonial culture, and we are being colonised. Thirdly, the spirit of truth. The spirit of truth beyond the domestication of unmindfulness. I'll repeat that because it slips and slides. Beyond the domestication of unmindfulness. In our text today, we heard the words of John's Jesus. When the Spirit of truth comes, she will guide you into all truth. Now, the ancient Greek word for truth, as I think you've all heard over and over from your many ministers, is aletheia. The core word aletheia, the core word is leith, L-A-T-H-E. In classical Greek, it means forgetting. In ancient Greek mythology, the river Leith was one of 5 rivers in the underworld, in Hades, which was the river of forgetfulness. The river was also known as the Ameles Patamos. Of course, if you know Patamos, it's the river horse, but anyway, Ameles Patamos, which is the river of unmindfulness. And I would say that our capitalist society is a river of unmindfulness. But to continue. Now the dead, on their boats into the future, drank the water to forget their past. So aletheia then has the sense, because it means the opposite. Aletheia means the opposite of leith. It has a sense of waking up, of remembering, of overcoming oblivion and stupor, being alive, vital, of being mindful of our embeddedness in our culture and its ideology, which can unconsciously shape our existence and our power dynamics, no matter where we are on the spectrum of progressive or not. John O'Donoghue wrote, "When our lives, minds and hearts are domesticated by the symbolic and cultural order around us, our lives are reduced. Our lives as free and equal children of the universe are disinherited. Almost without knowing, we slip inside ready-made, familial, socio-cultural, national roles, routines, and values. We acquire sets of conviction in relation to politics, religion, and work. The spirit of truth provokes us to journey into and beyond the domestication of unmindfulness, to think and live differently, to critique current theology and social power, and invent, to go back to Wainwright, foundational stories and symbols that yield life-giving meaning to all of us equally, which means presentation of divinity beyond male, white, middle class, rich symbolisation. On our faith journey, we are invited to continue to expose all our individual and collective and community expressions of divinity to the spirit of truth, to the story of Jesus, to the story of the divine source of life, to Trinity, to mystery. And to conclude, Trinity is only one expression of divinity, and there are only hints of Trinity in Scripture. Throughout church history, Trinitarian doctrines were shaped, they emerged, but each within their own cultural context. And often some of us are forced to take something from somewhere and absolutise it into our lives. And some creations were disempowering due to the patriarchal inventions. Now, for some of us, Trinity has little meaning or relevance. I've been in progressive congregations where after I've given a reflection on Trinity, they said, look, I don't even believe in that, but I admire your passion, which we have a right to. We in this place, we allow each other to hold the theologies that we have, and there are good reasons we hold them. But in case there are people who would like a few examples, I share the following of contemporary expressions of Trinity. Debbie Thomas, who I don't know if you know the blog Journey with Jesus, she's a journalist, she's written for that. She writes, "Then there is an inner energy of the one God who exists in three persons, an intrinsic plurality of goodness, a goodness with contrast and tension, not perfect uniformity. Their difference is at the heart of the divine, which invites us to live and accept and live difference. The divine is community. God is relationship, intimacy, connection, and communion. The one who is divine three is radical hospitality. The 15th century Russian iconographer. How many syllables are there? There's too many syllables. Andrei Rublev, at least I can say that in Russian, can't I? Which is on the front of your order of service. He created the Trinity icon, and this is, as you would see, the three persons around the shared table share an intimacy and appreciation of each other, and as you can see, there's no attempt to say which gender they are. And finally, David Lowe's writes, "The Trinity then is about the profound love of God that draws us into relationship with God, with each other, and with the whole creation and the cosmos." Let's just sit quietly and pause and reflect.